This is Amy Chan from CakeDecoratingSchool.com, and if you like cake decorating, you're in the right place. Welcome to our flower series. In this video, we'll be piping open camellia flowers. It's broken down to steps so you can skip ahead, rewind, and rewatch as desired. We're going to make two colors today for our blossoms. The first one is going to be pink. We're using American-style buttercream, but you can use another kind if you like say a Swiss or Italian meringue. And we're going to use the following liquid gel colors: lemon yellow and some neon bright pink. And I'm going to start with the bright pink. I'm just going to add a few drops. I want to make a nice bright pink shade for our petals. I'm just going to give it a mix around, and keep in mind that it'll develop some as it sits a bit. So I don't want to go too overboard with the amount of color. But I want to get a nice little rich shade. There we go. Just keep adding a few drops at a time until I get it where I want it. I think that's going to do it. Right now we're at a nice kind of medium tone, so that should darken quite a bit and give us a nice bright pink. Our second shade is going to be a little bit of yellow. We don't need a lot, just enough so that we can basically hold on to the bag. And I'm just going to go with a little drop of yellow. I don't need too much, but I want this color to kind of hold up next to that pink that we did. And it'll end up being pretty intense. So I don't want the yellow to be too pastel or too light. Just want that nice kind of bright citrusy yellow without it being too oversaturated. And I think that's going to be great. For this flower, we are using two disposable decorating bags. Mine are both 12-inch, and you can see they're both fitted directly with the tips. We have our yellow in a bag with a number 2, so a small round tip. And our pink is in a bag with a 125. This is a larger size decorator tip, and you can see it's a plain petal tip. It's time to review the techniques we're going to use for our open camellia flower. For our petals, we're using a 125 tip. We're going to be holding the bag at 45 degrees, and the back end is going to be off at 3 o'clock. We're only going to really change the orientation of the opening. When we do our first rows of petals, it's going to be nearly flat with just the skinny end barely off the surface. And as we go, we're going to kind of angle it up a little bit. And that's because our flower petals are essentially going to kind of open almost like a book. So it's like it's unfolding and there's layers of petals. So just rocking that skinny end up a little bit as we work our way in will allow us to have that nice little look and get all of our petals in there in a nice layered fashion. So when we pull our heart shapes, you just want to imagine drawing a heart with the top end of the tip. And as we go, to begin with, they'll be a little bigger and they'll probably have an opening at the bottom. That's fine. And as we work our way towards the center, they're going to be tighter and smaller. It's the same petal, it's just a larger, more exaggerated version of it by pulling wide and slowly versus a smaller, tighter one where you're just going really quickly and only traveling a short distance. We're also going to make use of some support wedges on this flower, and we're going to use our 125 for this. And all you have to do is hold that bag straight up and down, right above the surface, and give it a squeeze. And that's going to give us that nice little kind of teardrop-esque shaped wedge that is going to allow us to pipe on top of it and give some of our petals some support that's going to give them some ruffling and some depth. And finally, we're going to make some stamens with our number 2. So for this, just 90 degrees, straight up and down, right above the surface, squeeze, let that frosting connect, and then pull up while you're still squeezing. And that'll give you a nice little spike. And when we pair them all together, it's going to give us the look of some nice little frilly stamens in our flower. We've gone over our techniques, so now let's review how we're going to put them together to actually make a flower with them. We're going to start on our flower nail, and we're going to start towards the outside edge, so right at the rim, and we're going to pipe our nice little heart shapes. These will probably have gaps in the middle of the petal, so think those bigger, wider ones that we demoed before. And it's going to take 6 to 7 of them probably to make it all the way around, because we're using our large 3-inch flower nail. That last one, if you do a 7th one, it might overlap the first one a little bit, and that's perfectly fine. Once we do that, we're going to make a second row. We're going to pull the tip just a little bit towards the center, and since you're laying on top of a row of petals kind of like halfway now, you're going to want to rock the skinny end of the opening up a little bit, and that's going to put it in line so you can glide right on top of that first row of petals. We're going to only do 3 flowers, and think of it kind of like an every other. We're going to do them kind of on top of 2 of our first ones, so start in the middle of one, go across from the other one, skip, and go around. So it's only going to be every other, and that's going to help to start build up some depth for us, because we want some of our petals that we do to kind of have a nice natural wave to them and look like they're ruffled in addition to being heart shaped. So that's going to kind of set us up for success. That second row only have half as many petals. Next, we're going to go in with our 125 straight up and down, and we're going to do some little support wedges. So next to each of those second row petals, we're going to do a little support wedge on kind of each side. So just go all the way around, do one to the right of each petal and to the left, and you'll be set up for success for our third row of petals. So for this one, we're only going to do 3 petals as well, and we're going to start each one on top of a support wedge. It's going to dip down and then end on top of another one, probably kind of overlapping on the beginning of end on some of those petals from the second row. And this is going to give them kind of a dip in the middle. So it's kind of propping them up on the edge, and it's going to give them a nice little look where they kind of have a nice soft wave to them. Then we're going to repeat steps 3 and 4. So we're going to go next to the petals that we just did, pipe support wedges, one on the right of each petal, one on the left. And then we're going to angle the opening of the tip up a little bit, so the skinny end, and we're going to do a nice little 4th row of petals there, and just start on top of a wedge, dip, and end on top of a wedge. And that's going to give us a nice look to those center kind of rows of petals where they're a little bit ruffled. So we're just going to kind of do sets of 3 that are offset after that first row where we did 7. And then once we get there, we'll probably be pretty full in the center. If you worked a little larger, if you've gotten a bigger hole, if you have a bigger gap, you can always repeat steps 3 and 4 again and do another row of petals if you need to fill in the center a little bit and just kind of give it a nice little 5th row there. But if not, if you've got a nice little kind of almost closed up center there, we're just going to use that number 2 tip with our yellow and fill it in with some nice stamens. And you can pull straight up, you can pull to the side, you can pull along with the flow of the petals and just give it a nice wild frilly look in there, just to kind of close things up and kind of help hold everything together, but also to give yourself a nice little focal point in the middle of your flower. And this is a nice kind of like fully open look to a camellia that's great to pair with the regular camellias we do that have those wonderful cupped petals. So it kind of gives you an alternate style. They're still really big, they're still really bold, but they'll look really beautiful alongside each other. We've reviewed everything we need to know, so let's practice piping. I've got my 3-inch flower nail. I've got a nice little piece of parchment stuck to it with some extra buttercream. And now I've got my bag with my 125 ready to go. The bag itself, 45 degrees, back ends off towards 3 o'clock. And I'm going to start away from the middle, so towards the outside edge. And I'm just going to start drawing those little petals. So think just a little bit off the surface with the skinny end. And draw a nice little heart. And then just keep going right next to each other with each one. And you can see I get a little gap in the middle. There's a nice big hole there in the middle, and there's a little gap on the end of each petal. Don't worry about that. That'll get closed up as we work, and you won't even see it. Six, and then and just squeeze in a 7th. Just make sure that your ring is closed, even if it's squished a little on top. For our second row, we're only going to pipe 3 petals. I'm going to start in the middle of one and overlap onto a second one. I just want to change the orientation of the opening of the tip so the skinny end is pointing a little more up, so just a little closer towards pointing to the ceiling. So think of it as a little further away from the surface of the flower nail, and start just a little closer to the middle. So right here in the middle of 2 petals, and slide up and over. And you can see that leaves a little bit of a gap there because I changed the orientation of that opening. So they're kind of pointed up a little bit and not laying flat. And then I want to skip and go here and do the next one. So we're just going every other. So skip one and then right here. Nice little heart shapes. It's time for some little support wedges. So we're going to go next to each of those petals we did in the second row and just pipe a little bit of a wedge. And this is going to not really be seen. It's just going to sit there and act as a little support, a little extra support for the next row of petals. So for my next row, this third one, I'm going to pipe on top of those support wedges. So think about starting on top of one to the left, going over, dipping down into the middle between them, and then coming back and ending on top of the one on the right. So we're basically piping in the gap between the petals in the row before. I want to change the orientation of the opening, so rock it up just a little bit more, and you can see that kind of nests the fat end of the tip down in the middle of our center and our void for us. So just come up, rock it down into the dip, and go back down. So you can see, gives that little petal a nice little ruffled look to it, where it's got a nice dip in the center. So just do that on top of each of those sets of support wedges. Beautiful. Next, we're going to do another little round of supports. So just go right next to each petal in that third row and squeeze a little wedge. For our fourth row, we're just going to do the same thing we've been doing, which is rock the skinny into the opening up a little more. And you notice it's almost straight up and down now. I'm going to start down in my center on top of one of my support wedges, pipe up, dip in between, and right back down. And this is going to give me my fourth row of petals. And you can see the center is almost enclosed now. And we had just enough room to squeak that tip in there. To finish our flowers off, we're going to add some little stamens. So just some nice little frills, little spikes of yellow right there in the center. I'm just going to start all the way around the kind of outside edge of the base of those petals in the middle, and just kind of pull along the petals. That way, if you have any little gaps or kind of openings, it'll kind of fill them in for you a little bit. And then just do some in the center. So just get nice, wild, and frilly, and it's going to look like a beautiful open camellia flower. That's all for this lesson on open camellias. We hope you enjoyed this big, beautiful blossom. And if you like this one, try checking out our regular camellia flower. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like more about the cake decorating materials and equipment we use, or just some inspirational videos about cake decorating itself, you can follow us on Insta or YouTube at Cake Decorating School. If you'd like to know more about yearly membership and what it entails, you can go to www.cakedecoratingschool.com for more information. And if you're interested in these products, you can check the links in the description.